when we got back home, my son had moved out of our house, and we remodeled a lot of things from then till December. We put new hardwood floors in and redid them, and new windows and designer bathroom, everything I ever wanted to do for this house while the kids were living there. And then December came, and we needed to go to San Felipe to start our time there. And I didn't want to have to rent the house out. Yeah, we couldn't afford to let it just sit empty either. But the thought of somebody living in my newly remodeled house before I did, it wasn't setting good. And so we went ahead and left and went back to San Felipe with the house empty. And I was sitting in a church service, and Adrian was preaching, and John was up in San Diego at our home church. And that night during the service, while Adrian was preaching, at that time I didn't understand enough Spanish to be able to follow a 20 or 30-minute sermon. My brain would just have daydreams and go to lunch. And I remember during that time I was thinking about all the things, places we could go, things we could do if we weren't attached to the house. And I was having this little film strip daydream about how much that we could do if we didn't have the house to go back to. By now, all three of our children had moved out of San Diego, and we really had no ties there anymore, except for the house that we had had for 23 years. And so, when the service ended, 7 people came forward that night after Adrian was preaching, and I thought, this ministry has got to get out to the people, outside of the churches, and get out to where the people are. So I made this little deal with God that you're not supposed to do. If you do this, I'll do that. And it's not something you ever should do, because God is going to have His way. But I made this deal with God that if He gave me this peace, that I wouldn't mistake for anything else about selling the house, I would go ahead and sell the house. Because that was the only thing that we had left to give to start the ministry. Because it was obvious that we were going to have to find another place for the ministry, because it started as a music ministry, and we were assigned at a clinic, a hospital, and drum practice and music practice and sick people just didn't go well together. And so it was obvious that this portion of the ministry had to have its own place in order to function. And so I told Adrian, I says, we're going to go up tomorrow and we're going to put the house on the market. And he knew what a struggle that was, because I had waffled back and forth for 3 months on what to do with his house. And the reason it was so significant is because that house was my retirement. When John, he is retired military, so if he dies before me, I don't have any of his retirement income. I would have the house instead, and I would be able to sell that, and that would be my retirement. And so it was a very huge decision to make, because I didn't want to become my daughter's worst nightmare and have to go live with her or be homeless, one or the other. But so anyway, I had this incredible excitement of what to do if we didn't have the house, and I took that as a sign that it was meant to sell the house. So we went up, and that night we signed the papers. On the way out of town up to San Diego, we had stopped at one more place to look at, and it was the last place the agent had for us to look at in San Felipe. And it was it was the most awesome, ugly house. This house was the lot was a whole block long. It was totally gated. It had it had 27 pickup loads of trash on it, and a bougainvillea that grew all the way to the front door. But it was so perfect for the ministry, because it was just an awesome house. It had 4 separate entrances to 4 separate rooms. It had a kitchen big enough to handle groups. It had parking for I mean, he just had everything we needed to be able to house 99 plus 1. And so again, we got to San Diego, and we were really excited about this. And of course, John had no idea what we were talking about. But that night, we signed the papers, and the guy that was going to be selling the house for us was embarrassed, and he said, nothing has sold. He says, we're in a real estate slump here. And he says, we'll probably be doing this again in 6 months. And I kind of chuckled to myself. I thought, whoa, I was faithful, but God's not going to make me give up my house. He's got another plan. And so I left feeling pretty smug about that, that my house wasn't going to sell. Well, the Saturday, two Saturdays later, we got the call from the real estate agent saying that we were in escrow for $4,000 more than we listed for, and it was a cash deal. My house was gone. And I thought, it wasn't supposed to work like that. But now we had to make another trip back up to San Diego, and we had a room underneath the house that had all the treasures that you keep over the years. And you don't throw them away, but you never use them either. And we had to go through this room and start the process of sorting. And so I was down there and working in this room, and I had the most incredible attack of fear I've ever experienced in my life. And it was the kind that just took your breath away, and you sat down, you were just exhausted, you were sick to your stomach, you felt like you were on a train, you did your very, very worst thing you've ever done in your life, and you couldn't stop it, you couldn't change it. And I thought, whoa, but it was a reality thing. I had just realized that this selling of our house was going to happen, and all that we got from the house after paying all the remodeling was going to go into a house in Mexico that would be left for the ministry. And so when I get in trouble like that, I shoot these zinger prayers up, and I ask God for an immediate confirmation that what we were doing was the right thing, and that I wasn't just being really, really stupid. And I remember looking up, and across the room from me, probably maybe 10, 12 feet, was this picture that my sister had sent me when my father died. And it was the only thing we got from my parents, from their life. And I never paid any attention to it when I got it. I simply put it underneath the house because it was quite a large picture, and I didn't have space for it inside the house. But when I looked across the room, the back of that picture was to me, and on the back of this very, very old brown paper that they used to put on the back of pictures at that time, and was written on the back, "To Bonnie, love Daddy and Mom, 1951, the year I was born." And I thought, that is so interesting. Why was that picture given to me the year I was born? And then I tried desperately to remember what that picture was even about. It had always hung in my parents' house, but it was just always there, so you didn't see it anymore. And it had been years since I had seen that picture. And so I didn't have fear anymore. I had incredible curiosity to go over and see what that picture was, and to try to figure out why it was given to me the year I was born. I had an older sister and later a younger brother, and why was it given to me? And when I turned the picture around, the picture is a picture of 99 plus 1. It was Jesus knocking at the door, looking for the one who has never accepted the Lord. And he was carrying the wounded one, the one of the 100 that had strayed and was brought back to the flock. And then behind him was the 99. And I thought, whoa, that was so incredible that 50 years ago, I was part of a plan already. I don't know why that picture was given to me, or I have nobody to ask. Nobody is alive anymore that can answer. I'll have to wait till I get to heaven on that one. But that isn't the remarkable part of the story. When I grabbed the picture because now I was so excited that 99 plus 1 is a real thing. You know, it was part of the plan, and I didn't have any more fear. And it was then that I had peace in knowing that I was already part of this plan. I just didn't know it. You know, I'm not saying I'm a slow learner or anything, but 50 years later, I finally get the hint that, you know, this is what we're supposed to be doing. So I ran upstairs, and when I turned the picture around to show John the writing, when I saw the writing, the minute I needed confirmation that we were doing the right thing, it looked like it had been written in a black Sharpie pen. It was very bold and very obvious and easily to read. But when I turned the picture around, it was written in lead pencil, and you couldn't see it that far away. In fact, John had to enhance it on the computer just to have it show up on a photograph. And so, to me, that was my very, very personal miracle that God gave me, that I was a part of an incredible plan, because now 10 years later, 99 plus 1 has been the most awesome 10 years of our life. My house sold, and we made enough from the house to pay for that big, beautiful, ugly house. And it's now the headquarters of 99 plus 1. And I never lived a day in my newly remodeled designer bathroom house. But what the Lord has given us in return is so much more than we ever would have had we not have had the experience of 99 plus 1. And with the house selling, we bought the house, and we bought a brand new set of drums. I have never regretted a minute buying the house. But when drum practice used to be in my living room all day on Wednesday, I had some second thoughts, but never ever about 99 plus 1. And that's my story.